Well, first I want to thank you for taking the time to be here with me. I really appreciate it. And it shows you're putting your family first. And I
Mhm.
know you, as well as everyone else, has a lot going on.
Yeah.
Um, so,
Thanks for your
so
patience this summer. It's just been
yeah,
crazy.
it can be crazy for parents. I totally get it. I just really wanted to kind of address, what all parents are thinking of. Everybody wants their kids to be successful, right? We want them to do well, have, healthy relationships, good friends, become independent, and of course, live their dream. And over the last, 20 years, as I've been working with families, I found something that really kind of surprised me. And it wasn't the kids that were failing that worried me the most, and it wasn't the kids that were necessarily in trouble per se. It was the kids that were kind of doing fine, right? Straight A's, performers, athletes, leaders. And they are all kids with incredible potential, but underneath it was what I was seeing. So on the outside, they were showing, one um, facet of themselves. And on the inside, underneath it, they were worried about disappointing people or their worth was tied to achievement. So they really looked successful on the outside, but there was a lot of anxiety underneath all of that. So I kind of realized we were teaching teens, and I say teens, but I mean like tweens, teens, young adults, to really learn to achieve, but not how to know themselves. And I think that success is achieving things, but I also think it's knowing who we are and what we want to give to this world and how we want to show up and who we want to become. Goals are super important, but I also believe emotional intelligence is just as important. I'm going to share some shifts that I found that make a big difference for parents today. Um, and hopefully by the end that you can kind of do some reflection and know from the get-go. I am not saying any of this because you are not doing well parenting. I am saying all of this because these are things that I've seen, and some of these things you may be doing already, and some of these things you may say like, oh, maybe that's something I want to tweak and implement a little bit more. Parenting's not easy, but that's what I'm here for. It's support. A lot of us have teens, tweens, young adults that may sound like some of these things. Capable, but something feels off. They don't trust themselves. They shut down or become defensive. And this isn't them all the time, but we know that there's so much more that they can do, so much more that they can be and thrive. And oftentimes we're seeing it, but they might not be seeing it. So you're definitely not alone. And they actually, I should say, they may be seeing it, they're just not sure how to unlock it, because they let these things get in their way, whether it be their fears or their anxieties or past situations that have happened. Um, I know parents do a lot of work. I speak with a lot of moms that I've read this book, I've watched this podcast, and we're always trying to implement new things. So I just want to commend you and everyone else that is doing that, because when we do that, we also, like we're being vulnerable and putting ourselves out there. So I'm trying a different parenting approach, and if it doesn't work, I could get frustrated, upset, but we got to just keep trying new things and then being consistent with them. So it isn't for lack of love with parents. It's really we weren't really taught to not necessarily just react to the behavior. It's what's underneath the behavior, and I'll talk about that a little bit in a minute. So these are like where we're headed today. I'm going to explain why so many capable teens are struggling, even though they have super supportive families and lives. Three big shifts that I feel parents um, can take a look at and how they support their family, and then how to help your teen build self-confidence, emotional intelligence, self-trust. And it's something they have to do, but we're here to support them through that. And then at the end, I'm going to show you a little bit about my course, and hopefully that you'll take a look at that. Um, so just a little bit about me, and I know you know me, but maybe not everyone does. But I was a teenager, just like the one I'm talking about, and involved in all the things. Yet underneath it, I didn't really know who I was. And I was always trying to do the right thing, be the good kid. And that the reason I show you the picture of me as a teacher and me as an assistant principal is because those skills I did not learn to handle emotions carried through my life as an older person into my 20s, into my 30s. So, I thought I was just kind of doing the right thing, but I was really chasing achievement, not knowing who I was and why I was doing what I was doing. Um, so so I struggled with friendships. I struggled with self-worth. I struggled with, trusting myself. And so later on in life, I realized like I was a principal and I was helping kids to, get a better grade in science and history and math, but not helping them to necessarily as much, build resiliency or manage emotions, recover from setbacks. So that's why I started the House of Rise. So this is something that we often, like, parents will come to me and say like, my kid is procrastinating, or they won't talk to me, they're anxious, they're stuck to their phone, they have an attitude, right? And all that's true, and it's frustrating, and you want them to stop, and of course. And I understand this, and it's really what's the behavior behind this attitude we're seeing, or this anxiety, or this procrastination. So oftentimes, kids will get frustrated, they'll say things they don't mean in reaction, and we kind of want them to just, don't speak to me like that, or fix your attitude, and what's wrong with you now? And because we also have the things we're bringing to the relationship. But what if that really wasn't the problem? What if it wasn't the attitude or the fear, but it was like the fear underneath, or the lack of ownership I see a lot, or avoiding ownership, or just emotional overwhelm, or they may not even be afraid of failure. They may be afraid they're going to disappoint you. So that's when they stop trusting themselves, and that's when you see the anxiety, their perfectionism, and those other behaviors come out because of what's underneath. And so oftentimes you and I did this for quite some time, and I'm still guilty. I respond to their behavior, and then now I'm in a battle with them, or I'm in a conflict with them, or where it doesn't even have to be that big of a thing. It could just be a little disagreement, but that disagreement could have been handled differently by me as the adult. And so a lot of times we get sucked into their feelings because we care about them, we love them. And then now we're in their emotion instead of our emotion. So it's all about the communication. And I'll talk about that shift in a minute. So what we really want is, yes, we want them to stop having an attitude and stop, being not living to their potential and backing down on certain things. But we really want them much deeper to learn how to handle this and do hard things and build the confidence and have ownership for their relationships or behaviors, or feel a negative emotion but not stay stuck in it, right? So we want them to be able to fail a test and be upset about it, but then learn like, okay, what could I have done differently? Or have a conflict with a friend and not, fall apart, but be upset about it, but then learn from it. So that takes time. But we want them to learn these life skills so that, yes, one, they're not, bothering us and getting frustrated, but also two, it's 100% more healthy for them to learn how to build these internal skills. Um, so again, it's just about responding to their needs underneath the behavior versus just responding to the behavior. And sometimes you have to be the parent and you have to say, look, that's enough. And, it is what it is when they are super disrespectful. But when it is a situation where you can handle it by responding, we really got to look at what's underneath it versus just you know, the off the cuff response. And we oftentimes want to lecture, we want to remind them, we want to rescue them often. Um, but when we do rescue them, we sometimes communicate to them that I don't think you can handle this. So um, every time we want to solve a problem, or we want to, kind of just get it to end, whatever it is, the discomfort that they're feeling, we're robbing them that opportunity to build their confidence. So they have to do the hard thing. We have to be able to allow them to struggle, allow them to fail in order to really build that confidence. So, how do we actually make this shift? So, as I said earlier, you're a great parent. You're doing all the things. And these shifts that we're talking about are 2 millimeter shifts. It's not necessarily something that you have to, you know, completely change, but it's kind of the way you look at it. So instead of saying, like, why did you do that? It's help me understand what was happening for you. So instead of just, correcting them, you're kind of going at it from a curious point of view. Instead of like, you'll be okay when they're upset, validate their emotions. Like, that sounds really disappointing. And then talk about it with them. So oftentimes we want to problem solve for them. We already know the answer. We already know which direction they should go in, what they should do with this situation, but we got to give them the time to figure that out. So validating and saying, what do you think your next step is? And it doesn't mean that you are removing expectations from them or being permissive. You're just giving them the time to think and giving them the time to figure it out on themselves. And if they still, can't figure it out and they're coming to you for help, then that's when you want to step in. So it's not about the pressure. It's about, letting them problem solve first. So the first shift is all about you. It's regulating you before you respond. And you know this, we all know this, but are we taking the time to take care of ourselves? Are we taking the time to make sure that we are in a good place or the best place that we can possibly be on a daily basis before we are interacting with our kids? So oftentimes, we're putting everyone first, but have we taken care of ourselves so that we can then pause before we engage with our kids? So instead of taking on their emotions, I see this with one of my athletes quite often. He plays a match. He may not get the outcome he's looking for and goes right to mom and unloads on her. Great for him, not great for her, and then actually really not great for him either, because he may feel better right after, but then it becomes a battle between mom and him because she sees him struggling, tries to fix it. Then she starts to get frustrated, and now we have two frustrated people talking to one another. So what I work with him on is he is problem solving in his own, taking a break after the match, processing it to an extent before he sees mom. And then he's able to address mom in a more appropriate manner. And she is doing the work to not get involved in his emotions, to kind of just listen to him for a minute and then problem solve with him. So there's not two dysregulated people communicating at once. Um, so she needs to kind of step out and he needs to really step out. It might not be the time right now. He has to process it. She has to let him do that. And then they can come together and speak about the match later. So mom has to do the work, he has to do the work, and not get pulled into each other's emotional states. So that's a big one. And moms often feel like they're abandoning their kids, but they're not. They're giving them the space to figure it out, to regulate it, and really not force a solution, but just like, what happened? What were you feeling? What do you need? What are your options? What could you do differently? And that might not be in that moment that they need to hear that, but they might need to decompress and then do that reflection. So when anything is uncomfortable, when anything is an outcome they don't like, they can often just react. And reaction could look different for different kids, but it's learning that and then regulating yourself first would be that first shift. The second shift is identity shapes behavior. So it's really how you see them shapes how they handle life. So oftentimes you see them as what they're doing right now. So it's very difficult when you've asked them to do something 3 times to then say, oh, my teen is super autonomous and independent, when you're just asking them and asking them and asking. Understood. Yet we have to do our best to see them where we want them to be next. So instead of who are they right now, who do we see them becoming? And we kind of respond to them in that moment. I have a family with 2 teens. One is in high school. He's an upperclassman, and the other one is a freshman or no, sophomore in college, excuse me. And they've realized that their sons are super dependent upon them. They don't schedule a doctor's appointment. They miss a payment at college, and they're just really dependent upon mom and dad. And mom and dad have 5 kids. They have a lot of kids, so they have a lot of things going on. But so what we're working on is some basic strategies like handing over certain responsibilities to the kids and having them manage a calendar and schedule things. But then also on mom and dad's side, it's them really stepping out and letting things fall through the cracks if they have to fall through the cracks, which is hard. And it's harder as your kids are older in high school and college. It's a lot easier to let something slip through the cracks in 6th grade because it's not as important at that time necessarily. So it's again, who do we want to help them to become? We can see them as who they are right now, or we can see them as capable, independent, and those who can take responsibility for their lives. And we have to give them the opportunity. And a lot of parents start with giving their kids the opportunity of scheduling with me because I will always reschedule with them to begin with to get it organized. But them taking that, and that's just the scheduling piece is the first step. There's a lot more to them becoming autonomous beyond that. But also the parents are making a list of all the things that they do for their kids, and then they're picking things like over time that they're going to give to their child to do. So if your kid is in middle school, you might not have payments and things like that. You're going to handle those things. But it's packing their backpack. It's getting their lunch ready. There might be these certain things that they need to do that's on their plate now. And then what I also do with that family is the kids are running meetings with their parents. So they're checking in with their parents on all the things. So they can't just be given a bunch of responsibilities after 18 years of not taking on responsibility. It's a process. And the kids are taking responsibility for running the meeting. And then the parents are going to have to kind of nudge to begin with of like, did you do this? Did you do that? A little bit until they catch on and they start to take more responsibility. So again, it's moving from being dependent to becoming independent and seeing them that way and believing it because they aren't going to believe it until they start to do some of the things and then they see they can do it. They're not going to do it just because I have parents go, well, you should be more responsible. Well, how can they be if they don't have things that they're allowed to do? So that's a super important one for them to build resiliency. And it's not just saying it, it's really having them make the decisions and what feels right for you and what do you think? What have you already handled that tells us you can handle this? It's a really good question to ask if they're saying like, I don't know, or I can't do this. So what it is continually pointing them back at themselves. So it's easy to rescue or handle or give the answer. But if you point them back to themselves, then they always think over time, okay, well, what would I do in this situation? Or how have I done this before? Or can I apply what I did last time in this situation to this new situation? So continually pointing them back to, how do I feel? What do I think? Versus always, well, what would mom tell me to do? Or what would I do? I can't do this because I would get in trouble. Okay. So it's again, pointing them back to the internal versus the external. That is really important in shaping that more autonomous type of behavior. And then the third shift, ownership builds confidence. So again, a little bit of an overlap here, but it's leaning out when you think you need to lean in. And that starts with setting parameters and really boundaries within your family. Like these are our family values. This is within this zone, you can make decisions. But outside of this zone, we've already explained clearly that you cannot do this and you cannot do that. Whatever age you might be, you're 11, you're 17, however old you are, you have different parameters. But within these parameters, I'm going to allow you to figure out how you want to do it. If it's going to be taking the trash out, if it's taking the car, if it's homework, we're going to support you through this. But if you do your homework in the kitchen table, you do your homework in the living room, as long as it gets done, with no TV on, let's say, so it's letting them figure out how they're going to do it. And if they can't then handle that, then, you can support them more, but it's really giving them that ownership. And also beyond just the typical things, it's the relationships too. I was working with a girl who over the summer had a problem with a boy in camp, and he was kind of I wouldn't use the word bullying, but he was kind of saying some things and holding some things over her head, and she was just feeling very uncomfortable. And I worked through it with her and gave her strategies on how she should address him, kind of had a plan on how she was going to speak to him the next day. And I shared with dad, and dad right away was like, I'm pulling her out of camp. This isn't, she didn't share this with me. I'm so glad she shared it with you. And I was like, that's great, but just give her a day, let her handle it. And so he did. She handled it. And dad ended up not sending her to camp after that because of other reasons. But with that being said, the boy stopped what he was doing. She handled it. And the outcome wasn't necessarily about that situation. The outcome was that she knew how to stand up for herself. And is that going to come up for her again? Yeah, probably. And is she going to struggle through it? Sure. It was the first time she really stood up for herself. She's in eighth grade. So the hope is nobody bothers her again, but people will bother her again, and she's going to have the skills to handle it. And she doesn't have to be rude about it. She doesn't have to be inappropriate about it, but she knows, well, this is what's right for me, and these are my boundaries, and you've crossed those. And we're not, I don't take this, is what it comes down to. So dad was right in protection mode, which is normal, yet he let her figure it out in a situation that he knew wasn't going to be detrimental for her. It was going to be a learning experience. So that gave her evidence and confidence and to build her resiliency, instead of just solving it for her and then her continuing to flounder in the future. So giving her tools, giving her options, questions, responses. We kind of did like a little role play. So kind of letting kids safe fail and take risks that you feel are learning experiences for them. They're going to be uncomfortable, letting them figure it out, and not putting them in harm's way. But, the uncomfortability is a good thing. Um, so, so I really want to talk about, what happens if nothing changes. So as I see kids, their patterns may continue. As I shared earlier in my life, I didn't recognize my patterns as a teenager, then in my 20s and my 30s. So the situations that are happening to them in middle school continue to high school. If they can't self-advocate with their teacher in seventh grade, what's going to make them do it in the ninth grade? If they can't stand up to the girl or boy bothering them, how are they going to do that in high school and then in college? So they don't just magically learn how to do these things. We may tell them what to do, but telling them what to do is one thing, and then actually putting them in letting them handle situations in which they can do these things. So there is a cost if we don't change or make changes to how we parent and how we let them learn. And we want them to continuously look within versus looking outside of themselves. And they do need tools to do this. So, we give them a lot of tools. We give them tutors and sports and, training, and we send them to school and college prep and all this. Awesome. Because I really believe in all of that. But I also do believe that they need these internal emotional skills to become less dependent on the external, on people, and become more trusting in themselves, and really having their worth be tied to just who they are, not anything that they do or achieve. So I became a person that was an assistant principal, and that was my identity. But that's not who I am. That's my job. And I had to learn to separate that. And I'm learning that in my 30s. I don't want I don't want our kids learning that in their 30s. I want them learning that much younger. So, yes. So again, um, so the cost of inaction is really having what I call a success without self. So I want them to pursue things. I don't want their grades to determine their worth and their any other accolades. So I want them to know that they can work for this, that they can, really care deeply about the outcome. They can be disappointed and bounce back. But I really think to be successful, they have to have success with self. So not success where they've lost themselves, but success where they know who they are, they know how to balance their life, they are living to the fullest potential they possibly can, and That's really why I created the four pillars of the House of Rise. So resiliency, identity, self-confidence, and emotional regulation. And it usually goes in the order of we first work through emotional regulation. How are they going to kind of stay grounded, know when they're having a big emotion that they can learn how to use strategies to handle it. They start to become more self-confident because they're doing hard things, they're being uncomfortable, they become resilient. And then through that, their identity shifts. And it shifts over and over again over time. Um, but they learn to really be who they really are unapologetically. They can begin to set boundaries. They can begin to learn about themselves and why they maybe make decisions they make or do take actions they take. And from there, they can learn their patterns. And once we learn our patterns, that becomes our power. So their identity becomes one of more of a powerful version of themselves versus who they might have been in the past. And now it's basically just a choice. So it's a choice to implement some of the strategies that I've shared. It's a choice to potentially work through the course that I'm sharing. And it's a potentially, maybe you want to do one-on work coaching with your child. But the difference is that they're learning those internal skills, pointing back to themselves versus to others. So what I did create is the mental edge is know yourself, master yourself, trust yourself, express yourself, and live your purpose. So it's all about awareness to begin with, their values, their strengths. Then we move into their thoughts and emotions, their habits. Um, then we create evidence so they can begin to trust themselves. They express themselves in communication and relationships. And then lastly, like they begin thinking about how they want to live their lives. Older kids may begin to think about their purpose long term for careers. Younger kids may just think of how they want, who they want to become as a student that they are right now in the activities and with their friends. So it applies to both younger and older kids. And the way it's set up is short bite-sized lessons. So nothing for kids to sit for hours and hours. Each lesson, about 5-minute video, and then there's worksheets that go along with it, as well as different ways that they can implement it. So, some kids might journal, some kids might visualize, they might do a movement activity, they might do a voice note or create something. But in totality, each lesson could take them anywhere from 15 minutes to a half hour. So not a huge commitment for those, we know our attention spans as adults is short and so is theirs. There's also a community. So they're not in this alone. There's others working through the same situations they're working through. It's not that they have a problem that they need to fix. It's that they are where they are and we want them to thrive and see how they can meet the goals of their internal self and make it to that next level. And then also there's parent support. I have a monthly Q&A that's just me live that you can ask me any types of questions, anything you want to know about your kids, about the course in connection with it. The course is designed, it says teens, but frankly, these are all activities and lessons that I do and have done as an adult myself. So there's no shame in doing some of the things yourself as well, and or supporting your teen along with it. So yeah, I have like about 40 plus lessons and missions. There's 5 quests. So it's set up like as I shared with the Q&A, the community access, and you have this for life. And yeah, if you aren't sure, that they're going to do it, here's some things. Actually, I'll go back to that in a minute. So this is everything that they receive. So there's the workbook, there's the whole course as I shared, the Q&A, the community access, the tools, activities, and reflections. And the lifetime access is, I have courses from other coaches that I still look at today because I'm a different person I was today than I was 2 years ago. So they can use this over time. And before I get into that, I wanted to share like what some of the people are saying. So like I shared with one of my kids here, Devin, he has been working with me one-on-one about tennis. It's all about tennis, but it's truly not all about tennis. So we use tennis as an avenue for him to learn the skills, but then through that, we're we're really basically, I'm giving him lessons in the course to do in between our sessions, or he sometimes goes into the course, watches lessons, and then comes back to our sessions. But he's really learning the skills of the mental skills that he needs to grow and to continue this growth through the course, as well as with my one-on-one support. So there's other people here that have said other things, but I definitely think that it pairs really well with one-on-one coaching. And it also starts with, yes, they are learning from the course, but they're really reflecting on it and applying it. So it's not just about here's information. That's why I didn't make the videos long. It's basically, you can find information everywhere. Yet this is more about like, I want you to reflect on it. I want you to take some action on it. And it's just small bite-sized actions that they can do in a couple minutes each day, and then become more consistent with it. And through that action taking, it isn't just about them finishing the whole course. It does go in an order, but they can do it as they feel needed. Or if you see something that pops up in their relationships, maybe you need to go to the third quest versus the second quest, and just kind of work through some things with them in different portions of the course. So it's not just about finishing it; it's about, can they learn from specific lessons in it? And certain parts of it, they may have strengths already that they don't need certain lessons as much as others. So that's at your discretion. So it's if you think maybe, they're not going to do this, or you can't get them to do this, or, it's basically what perspective you're looking at it from. So that's kind of why I made it gamified as a quest and as missions versus as a lesson and a homework thing. So it's meant to be fun. And if you do get stuck and you're not sure how to implement it with them, that's what the Q&As are for. That's what I'm here for. So I'm here to give support around how you can use it with your family. And yeah, I guess the outcome is like, what if they actually did trust themselves? Like, think about it for a minute, imagine it, or believe in themselves and or manage their emotions in a healthy way. So I just want you to think about your kid right now as where they are, and then take a minute and imagine, what if they were able to build some of these skills over the next few months, working through this. I mean, that'd be absolutely fantastic. So you're basically investing in the opportunity for them to develop these skills and carry it into their later years, into their high school and college years, depending upon where they're starting today. So no one's perfect, but it's about them thriving and getting better in the various areas of their life. So yeah, so I've set up like a founding membership for families. It's basically the complete course, the companion resource, the community access, a monthly Q&A with me, and lifetime access. And that founding membership will be good through the end of this month, and that's for $250 for everything shared here. So what I'll do is I'll drop the link in the chat. If you're interested, you can take a look at the information on the landing page. And I'll do that right now. Give me 1 second. Actually, I might do it on my next, I'm going to do on my next slide. I'll drop that in for you towards the end because I just wanted to share a couple more things with you. If two more things I wanted to share is like one, if you think if they're not struggling right now, quite often we wait too long sometimes for kids, and then they're already struggling, and they have to go from dysregulated to regulated again, and then we can start working together. So they don't have to be struggling to start this. They can be doing really well, and you want them to do even better. And if they don't start it right away, that's okay. I mean, the sooner they start it, the better. But like I said, you can use your discretion as a family. And no, this shouldn't be something else you have to manage. It could be something you do together with your family, you and your daughter, you and your son. And if it becomes something to manage, that's when you want to get on the Q&A with me and work on how can we give them more accountability. So yeah, so I just want you to think about them being successful with self, not successful without self. And us just learning like what's underneath these emotions and these behaviors that we're seeing. So yeah, so thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you. And I will drop that link in the chat now. I'm going to stop sharing here.